So for anyone saying that Necromancer is not viable, hi, my name's Wolfsmoke, and I have a really cool Necromancer build I want to show you guys. And just respect the key passive to the Shadow Blight. Shadow damage infects enemies with your Shadow Blight for 2 seconds, and your minions deal 10% bonus damage to enemies with Shadow Blight. So, shadow damage infects them for 2 seconds, 10% bonus damage, right? Every 10th time, it's an additional damage. I think that'll be good to have. Now, take it from the top. Just know our key passive is shadow damage. Okay, so I start out with Hemorrhage. Everything with the modifiers on it. Let's just give it a full breakdown. This is maxed out all the way up the left side of the tier. You burst an enemy's blood, dealing 369 hemorrhage. Has 20% chance to form a blood orb. Keep in mind, hemorrhage is a 20% chance for a blood orb. We're going to get additional 20% stacks as well from some of our gear, which you're always going to have blood orbs on the field. Constant healing for you. And as we work down the skill tree, I will explain. The blood orbs, if you get a certain aspect and max it out, can heal your minions up to, I think, 30% or 45% when it's maxed out. I'm currently only getting a 10% heal from blood orbs to my minions, but it's still a heal for the minions. There's so many that are always on the ground, it's really good to have. So, enemies around that main target, you get 2 additional essence per enemy hit. So if they're grouped up, you're retaining essence just by using that skill. Great to have essence because that's how you use your skills as a Necromancer. I'll take you down here to this tier. I always get Bone Spear as my skill that I put down on my first hotkey. My left click is Hemorrhage. My right click, I run Sever. It costs 20 essence, but a Spectre is shot forward from you. Deals damage. And on the return, it also has follow-up damage. It will damage enemies along its path for 25% of the initial damage. And it deals 2% increased damage for each minion you have up upon cast. I'm normally running 7 minions at a time. I run the Reapers to rip flesh. And I run the Cold Mages. And you guys will see in some of my gear, my Cold Mages proc a Blizzard type of damage. It also freezes elites and other enemies in place, which is amazing to have in a fight, especially if you're soloing a lot of your dungeons or clearing a lot of mobs by yourself. Makes life a lot easier. So, Sever, very viable, as well as some of the other skills that we're going to get into. Now, up here, this is just an increase of your essence. When you max it out, you get another, your maximum essence is increased by 9. I mean, hey, why not? It's more essence. It's good to have. This here, Huge Flesh. Your damage has up to a 12% chance to create a corpse at the target's location. This chance is doubled against bosses. Boss fights are where you're most commonly going to be losing your minions. It's always good to have corpses to either 1, be able to summon up more, or 2, you'll have the ability to use another skill that we work into right down here called Corpse Explosion, which will give you the access of blowing up a corpse to deal damage. Now, I have my Corpse Explosion spec'd for shadow damage, very specifically for my build, which we're going over currently, so let's talk about it. This is a Corpse Explosion. I'm 7 out of 5 because I have a piece of gear that pushes me 2 over the 5 of 5 max out threshold, which is great. You release a Vile Massima from a corpse, dealing 1858 shadow damage over 6 seconds. Corpse Explosion's radius increases by 15% as well right there. So any enemy hit by that is taking almost 2k damage over the course of 6 seconds. That, ladies and gentlemen, is per corpse. So, if you stack 5 corpses, let's round up the 1858 to 2k. 5 corpses over 6 seconds let's round it out. Let's call it even if it's over 10 seconds. You're dealing 10,000 damage over time to those enemies. If I'm doing my math correctly. And if that works the way that I think it does. Which per this build, it seems pretty melty. Pretty melty. So, you're going to want to get Corpse Explosion and max it out. Corpse Explosion radius increased by 15%. It's always good to have. Then right up here is the Blighted Corpse Explosion. Which, Corpse Explosion becomes a darkness skill. And instead of exploding, it releases a Vile Maxima dealing 1398 shadow damage over 6 seconds. You only select one of these upgrades. The other one is it deals 8% increased damage to enemies that are slowed, stunned, or vulnerable. Which you make things vulnerable here with your Bone Spear. Right? But we like the Corpse Explosion to be the shadow damage. Okay? I got Thorns on the build. I have increased damage and life of my Skeletal Warriors by 45%, making them a little bit more tanky. And I spec'd into Grim Harvest, which consuming a single corpse will give you back 6 essence. So every time you use Corpse Explosion or summon a minion, you are retaining essence, just like how you're retaining essence when you deal the damage proc with Hemorrhage. So it's just another way of retaining essence during a fight. That way you can always use your Bone Spear, which it breaks into 3 shards. The first enemy it hits makes the target vulnerable for 3 seconds. I have something that's passive on a piece of gear that then actually makes every enemy hit by the initial shot vulnerable, and they take 70% increased damage from the splinters that ricochet back, because it fires in 1, breaks into 3 when it comes back. But everything it fires through, pierces, and hits all becomes vulnerable, and it comes back normally at a 30% damage from the initial. Now it's coming back with 70% damage of that initial. That's great, by the way. So yeah, really nice to have the Bone Spear. That same piece of gear that I'm talking about, that makes everything vulnerable from the first initial shot, is also the piece of gear that is pushing me to 7 out of 5 here in the Bone Spear. So just OP as fuck. Feels really good. Let's see. We were right down here. We talked about those. Moving down here to the curse skills. I don't use these. I don't advise using them really at all. I mean, this one, close enemies take more damage. You deal more damage to distant enemies, but it's like, I'm already doing enough damage with how I'm building my build. I don't need these. Learn your builds, guys. Learn your builds. So when we come down here, this is where you can kind of vary and change things up from where I'm at. I would actually advise where I have 1 out of 3 to actually have these ones specifically chosen and maxed out. This one here, when a corpse is formed from your skills or your minions, which my minions tear flesh, and I have other passives where my skills are also removing flesh, it fortifies you even further. So for the other fortification aspect, where we're already getting a bunch of fortification in the build already, this will even further amplify that with the couple more skill slots that I have available before the Paragon points. With that as well, the Gruesome Mending, while below 50% health, which I'm pretty much never at, but I needed to select this to get another passive. You receive 10% more healing. Don't max this out. You're not going to be below that amount of health unless you're doing something a little silly. If you're going at a good pace and you're leveling properly, you should be fine. With that as well, the Transfusion. This is where the Blood Orbs come into play pretty well. So the Blood Orbs, and I advise having this maybe maxed out because it also heals your minions for 15%. The next rank is 30%. I think after that is 45%. So every time you pick up a Blood Orb, you get your normal healing, plus your minions get 45% of that base healing. We're already getting Blood Orbs from Hemorrhage, keep that in mind. So as we move down here to our ultimate, I have Blood Wave, which conjures a tidal wave of blood that deals 1266 damage and knocks back enemies. Blood Wave slows enemies for 50% for 4 seconds. It also leaves behind a guaranteed 3 blood orbs as it travels. Wow, imagine that. Imagine that. More blood orbs for more healing for you and your minions. You can take things as a necromancer. Oh my god. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Everyone says it's not that great of a build. I think it's a pretty good build. I don't know. I think it's pretty viable. Anyway, your blood wave slows enemies right there. That was already covered. And then it leaves the 3 blood orbs behind. So just remember, you get that. You got to get the other 2 tiers for all of those passives. And you'll notice, wait, Wolf, what's going on? That's a blood skill. Where's it at? Where's it at? Where's it at? Right here. One of my rings is called Circle of Ultimate Shadow. Blood Wave becomes a darkness skill, dealing shadow damage. It desecrates the ground it travels over, dealing 2688 shadow damage over 4 seconds. And that's how you make a blood spec build, a shadow spec build. And then when you get down past your ultimate, you get your key passive. And oh, what do we have here? Shadow Blight. Shadow damage itself infects enemies with Shadow Blight for 2 seconds. You and your minions deal a 10% bonus damage to enemies with Shadow Blight. So get this. Most of my skills, especially my ult, are shadow damages. Right? Every time I damage something with shadow, it gets infected with Shadow Blight. And for 2 seconds, every time I hit something for 2 seconds following that hit, I deal 10% more damage on the follow-up. Y'all following me on this build? Are we feeling good about this? Fuck it. You know what? Oh, excuse my language. We're going to have to edit that out. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and make this a YouTube video. And I would like any other necromancer that potentially has some tips and tricks for me. Let me know in the comments below. Anybody who this has helped, leave a like. And yeah, that's pretty much the rundown of the skill tree that I have, right? Now, this procs a barrier. This also procs a barrier. This gives us, excuse me, additional minion attack speed. We have the, almost 8% increase in bone skill. So your bone spear is even further buffed there. This one, again, it makes the blood wave a shadow, right? And then this ring right below it, it causes the main things are these 2 key items, my rings, these legendary ones. I haven't done anything to them other than adding the additional armor into the slots. Again, the blood wave firing 2 additional waves, that's amazing. This is the title ring, and this is the Circle of Ultimate Shadow ring, which essentially makes your Bone Storm, more importantly for my build, the blood wave, it makes that shadow damage, which is amazing. So the main juicy aspect of it, I mean, this one here, consuming a corpse, has another 20% chance of forming a blood orb that stacks with a 20% hemorrhage. Now, when you're in a fight, you got a 40% chance of just naturally forming blood orbs, which are healing you and your minions. It's great to have. This is the Bone Spear's primary attack, makes the enemies hit beyond the first enemy vulnerable for the 2 seconds. And then the follow-up, again, it deals 70% of damage versus the 30% damage it normally did. I'm not sure if that stacks. If that does, then that means it's going out and coming back for the same amount of damage, which is great. So I'll have to test that and actually, that's really it on these. The +2 rank of corpse explosions, the only reason why I have these on, I'm probably going to put a different passive in there. But the +2 on corpse explosion is what puts it at 7 out of 5. Then here with the boots, every 10 seconds, your cold skeletal mages, which I run, which attack roughly 10% faster due to the necklace that I have. The minions have an attack speed boost, but every 10 seconds, while they're attacking faster and dealing that much more damage, it deals 510 cold damage every 10 seconds when it casts Blizzard. And that also continuously chills enemies for 8% over 6 seconds. If I have all my mages up, it's getting chilled 8% times 3 if I'm not mistaken, because every single mage is doing that 8% of chill over 6 seconds. So if it's one big boss and all my cold mages are up, they're attacking it really rapidly, they're also building the chill that way. I mean, I can freeze elites like that sometimes. It's absolutely insane. So I hope this has helped you guys, and you guys have kind of hopefully seen some of the gear that you can find. I mean, this also helps 12% fortify generation. That just boosts all the fortification that we're already getting within the build, which we can further with some of our other skills that we haven't fully maxed out yet. So enjoy your time in Diablo. Have fun taking on hell. It's your boy Wolf Smoke. I hope this helps some of you guys. I hope some of the necromancers out there that maybe have acquired too many skills with your actual skill points, go ahead and dial that back a little bit. Find something that you really like to use. Maybe take some notes from here. Maybe find some other videos real fast. So again, you want to raise your skeletons and minions. I have so many corpses on the ground, you always got to keep them fresh. Corpse explosion. Always have corpses on the ground. Might as well blow them the hell up. And we have them set for shadow damage over time with the initial damage that's already there too. Right? And remember, everything that's damaged with shadow damage, whether it's initially damaged or if it walks through and takes shadow damage from the damage over time, it is then weakened for 2 seconds by 10%. Meaning, I do 10% additional damage for those 2 seconds. My minions as well. Right? So we're all about that decay. I run Bone Spear. It's good to open them up. Makes everything vulnerable due to the passives that I have. Very OP. Blood Wave, which again is shadow damage due to a ring that I have, a legendary one that turns my blood skills into shadow damage. This is a tidal wave that knocks back enemies. It does the slowing of the enemies for 4 seconds by 50%. It also leaves behind 3 blood orbs, which heal us up and our minions. And then the great thing is the item that I have that makes that the shadow damage is right here. And the ring below it adds 2 additional waves to that blood wave. So let me go ahead and showcase it. There, there, and there. And all of that ground is decayed. Look at all these healing orbs. Because remember, every wave leaves you 3. So if I max out that blood orb heals my minions, it heals them up to 45%. I currently only have it at a 15% heal for my minions. Anyway, for those that tuned in, thank you. Hey, it's my first Diablo experience. I think I figured out something with the Necromancer that's pretty viable. It's pre-level 50. However, very viable stuff. I think if this build is able to be carried through, this would be really fun late game with some really crazy numbers on the battlefield. So I will catch you guys next time for an updated build video once I get into the Paragon tree and I further complete the MSQ. I'm still currently in Act 4, by the way. So once I finish that up, do a couple Helltide dungeons, I'll check back in with the build, show you guys a little bit more what we got going on once we pass level 50. Much love from your boy Wolf. Hope you guys have a good one. Peace.